Again.
Why do cops treat certain protesters differently than others? Like this protest, perfectly okay, but anything with this flag somehow is not. Why is that? Well, I recently did a deep dive into this topic, and you will not believe the disturbing ties that I uncovered. In the forest behind me is Cop City, a sprawling police training facility built on 85 acres of land right here in Atlanta, designed to prepare law enforcement for increasingly intense urban challenges.
Oh my goodness.
Gina,
This is so dangerous.
Or in other words, the continued militarization of American policing. But what most people aren't talking about is the complex web of private donors, corporate interests, and one key foreign interest whose involvement raises serious questions.
The counterterrorism activities and Israel has dealt with this for such a long time.
For decades, pro-Israel groups have poured millions of dollars into training U.S. law enforcement officers in Israeli counterterrorism and crowd control methods, tactics that are now being used to manage protests and dissent on American streets. The crucial question we have to ask is, why is Israel, a foreign nation, investing millions of dollars to shape U.S. law enforcement strategies? What could they stand to gain from influencing how American police are trained and deployed? And today, we're going to find out. The relationship between U.S. law enforcement and Israeli military forces can be traced back to the early 1990s. In 1992, the Georgia International Law Enforcement Exchange, GLE, was established to facilitate training between U.S. police officers and Israeli counterparts, sending hundreds of officers each year to Israel to learn counterterrorism, crowd control, and surveillance tactics. After 9/11, the number of these kinds of exchange programs proliferated, with funding from not only American taxpayers, but also prominent pro-Israel advocacy groups like the Anti-Defamation League and the Jewish Institute for National Security Affairs.
Deputy Chief, and I'm in charge of Homeland Security for the Cleveland Police.
I'm the Chief of Police in Montgomery County, Maryland. I'm with the San Diego Sheriff's Department.
I'm the Homeland Security Director for the state of Alabama.
As of the latest available estimates, more than 120,000 U.S. police officers have been trained by Israeli officials, importing harsh techniques the Israelis use to control Palestinians in the West Bank and applying them to control racial minorities in America, particularly in Black and brown communities. One of the most controversial consequences of the U.S.-Israel law enforcement collaboration has been the construction of the Atlanta Public Safety Training Center, known as Cop City.
We are getting the first look at the new Public Safety Training Center, the project which protesters called Cop City.
Cop City. Cop City.
Cop City would allow police officers to train in simulations of urban environments, practicing military-style tactics such as crowd control, riot suppression, and house-to-house searches. The facility would even include mock storefronts, schools, and homes, meant to replicate the urban environments in which police are often deployed. Cop City has, however, also become the flashpoint of national controversy, with activists drawing direct links between the facility's design and Israel's mini Gaza urban warfare training center in the Negev desert in Israel, which was established to simulate Palestinian urban centers.
We built here a huge infrastructure that try to make sure that when you fight in a village, you know how to fight in a village, to make sure that you know who is the enemy, where is the enemy, and who is the people that you don't want to kill.
In January of 2023, a large demonstration at the construction site turned deadly when police shot and killed an activist, Manuel Tortuguita Pais Terran, who had been camped out in the forest to prevent its construction.
So we were just laying in bed talking, and then all of a sudden we heard and saw just like 15 or so police in full military like combat gear, like with AR-15s, just like coming through the woods directly at us. We were waiting to be put into a transport vehicle, and that's when I heard gunshots. I screamed when I heard it, and the police officer that like had me also responded, like both. Like they knew something bad happened,
While the Atlanta Police Department initially claimed that Tortuguita had fired first, body cam footage that was later released indicates the initial shot may have been fired by one of their own officers.
You fucked your own officer up.
In June of 2023, Atlanta residents collected over 116,000 signatures, almost double the number required, seeking to place the question of Cop City's construction on the ballot. However, the city government, led by Democrat Mayor Andre Dickens, blocked this referendum. The city rejected the first version of the petition based on a technicality, and when it was resubmitted, the city of Atlanta sued the petitioners, arguing that the referendum was unconstitutional in the state of Georgia. Now, in 2025, as Cop City becomes operational, that appeal is still currently sitting with the 11th Circuit. How democratic of the Democratic Party to ignore the will of the voters. But why? Because beyond being controversial for its militarized design, there is an obvious question we need to ask. One with, as it turns out, perhaps a not so obvious answer. Who is shelling out the $90 million to build it?
Israeli expertise in areas such as counterterrorism, cybersecurity are acclaimed and respected around the world. Many of the strategies that I pursue as the 59th mayor of Atlanta were informed by my Project Interchain experiences.
Yes, it turns out Cop City is being funded by corporate billionaires with deep ties to the country of Israel, specifically pro-Israel lobbying groups like AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. Notably, Bernie Marcus, the late co-founder of Home Depot, has contributed millions of dollars to the Atlanta Police Foundation, which oversees the construction of Cop City. He was also a major donor to AIPAC. Another donor with ties to AIPAC is Douglas Hertz, the CEO of United Distributors. Also, a surprising fact that many are unaware of, Georgia is actually the U.S.'s 7th largest exporter to Israel, with exports totaling over $389 million a year. And since 1996, Georgia companies have received nearly $615 million in foreign military financing contracts, which have supported defense companies like Northrop Grumman and Hewlett-Packard. Somebody warned us about the merger between corporate and state, and in this case, a foreign state no less. Other corporate investors include major firms such as Bank of America, Chick-fil-A, and Coca-Cola, showing a clear overlap between pro-corporate and pro-Israel causes, both of which benefit from the expansion of militarized policing practices in Atlanta and the rest of the country. And I want to remind everybody, by definition, investments are made with the assumption that there will be a return. In this case, Israel's influence on American policing, particularly in the context of protests that challenge U.S. policies on Israel, places Israel in a unique position to safeguard its interests by relying on U.S. police to enforce its own narrative, especially as anti-Israel sentiment rises among American citizens. And the construction of Cop City in Atlanta is a direct manifestation of this influence. As protests against Israel's actions in Gaza continue to rise, U.S. police, equipped with Israeli tactics, are positioned to suppress opposition to Israel's policies. This dynamic has become even more pronounced under the Trump administration, which has sought to stifle anti-Israel activism by declaring it a form of anti-Semitism and threatening legal and financial repercussions.
You're going to be under arrest. So turn around.
Okay,
Stop resisting. Stop resisting.
Okay, he's not resisting. He's giving me his phone, okay? He's not, I understand, he's not resisting.
Put your arm
Like,
don't worry about it. You're going to have to come with us. Don't worry about it.
I'm coming with you, no way. No one's resisting, no one's getting worked up.
hi, Amy. Yeah, they just like handcuffed him and took him. I don't know what to do. And what should I do? I don't know.
However, while the state may grow more repressive, I think there's power in solidarity. The fight against militarized policing and for Palestinian rights has become a symbolic struggle for all marginalized communities. Personally, the one thing I've never shied away from is advocating to support the civil rights of those who may not look like me or think like me because, and this may sound a little bit counterintuitive, but I believe that gives us the greatest chance of creating a more inclusive and harmonious future. The power of protest, collective action, and cross-cultural solidarity remains, I think, our most potent weapon against rising authoritarianism.